Uh, as you're aware, the order that details the conduct of this recount exercise that is ongoing by the Guyana Elections Commission that was gazetted on the 4th of May caters for a review of the duration to be done within the first week of the exercise. Today marks the 7th day or the last day of the first week of the exercise, and as detailed therein, the Commission met this afternoon to discuss issues touching and concerning the exercise. I believe I can say without fear of contradiction that every member of the Commission agrees that this exercise should be executed in as timely a manner as possible, and of course with the due efficiency that attends to such an exercise. We explored several issues related to that, and in fact we have, having observed what has happened over the last few days, we are now looking to see what steps can be implemented to further reduce or to increase the speed with which the exercise is being conducted. In this regard, we have looked at, we have mulled several options, and these include an increase in the number of workstations. We have agreed to take a walk around the facility. Some of us, commissioners, have already done it. We've done it in a bipartisan manner already. We have identified, at least in theory, some of the workstations, some of the areas within the facility that workstations can be included. And this includes vacant areas within the building. In what we plan to do, I was just informed earlier on by the chairman that the National COVID-19 Task Force and the health team that had visited with us this facility prior to the commencement of the activity and the setting up of or confirmation of the workstations, they will be re-invited to go through with us and look at those facilities, and we'll look at the security aspects of it and so on. As I stand here, I have no doubt that the facility has the capacity to increase the number of, or accommodate rather, the number of stations that are currently working. This will obviously better enable us to have more boxes counted simultaneously, and as a consequence reduce the overall time. In addition to that, and this is something also aimed at reducing the time taken now per box. As you'd recall me saying even before we started, the factors that are to be considered would be 1, the number of boxes that can be counted simultaneously, 2, the time taken per box, and 3, the length of the work day. 2 of those 3 have been addressed. The second one, and I raised this with you before, there has been instances where it just takes too long to go through one box. It takes almost an hour or almost a half an hour to just open up the box, open up the envelopes, etc. The time taken for the actual counting of the ballots is very short because it's a mechanical process, and many of the workstations have developed a process, a sequence, a rhythm, if you may, in how this is done in a timely manner. And then the other thing that has taken a lot of time is the actual filling up, the completion of the documents which form the report from that station. We are looking, as we speak, at reducing, there are some envelopes in that ballot box that are almost, they're irrelevant to this process. I highlighted one of them before, I believe, for example, the folios. Folios are given as a tool to polling agents so that when, for example, now allegations are being made that dead persons voted or migrated persons voted, you could have, the folio is there as a tool to look at that. to look at those persons and compare them to their pictures, to a larger picture that is on the ID, to look at greater detail than is contained on the ID. I believe the folios contain mother's name and so on, and parents' name, and that can be ascertained here. So those are not necessary to be counted now. It doesn't matter whether 10 folios went out and 5 came back, or 10 went out and all came back. That's immaterial. So that's an example of some of the things that we are looking at reducing scrutiny of, that will speed up the process. We'd also taken a decision that ballots will be scanned. The actual ballots that are marked will be scanned. Not every ballot will be scanned. It will be scanned randomly. We have seen instances where every ballot is being scanned, and that is increasing the burden time to do one box. So we are looking, secondly, at reducing the burden of the documents or the aspects that are being examined. The third suggestion that is on the table for our consideration is to set a target number of boxes per day. So, for example, each workstation will have a target or a quota that you should, for example, finish 10 boxes or 11 boxes per day. And, of course, the earlier you finish, the earlier you can go. But that's just a suggestion at this point. If a fixed target of boxes is assigned to each station, it will clearly give us a better indication as to the time likely to that this overall process will take. Those are the factors that we are taking into consideration presently as it relates to the consideration of the duration of this process. Outside of that, you'd be aware yesterday we met with the newer parties, a delegation from the newer parties. And they have raised some issues. This is a dynamic process. From the time they requested a meeting to the actual time of the meeting, some of the issues were overtaken by events. But they were raised nevertheless because we had the formal meeting, and some of those issues were discussed today. One of the pressing issues is the objections that are contained in the observation report. I have dilated enough, I believe, on that. And we took decisions at the Commission as to how it will be dealt with. However, as late as this morning, we observed that changes were being made in relation to how the observations were made, how the objections were made, what was being allowed, what was not being allowed. So we had to reaffirm that this morning, and I'll tell you that we have all of these observations that are being put in there, or all of these objections that are being put in there under the rubric of observations, in our respectful opinion, are allegations. Because if you're going to come in a station and speak about someone having migrated or having died without any proof, it is obviously an allegation. So it was suggested and accepted that any one of these observations that are being put there would be prefaced by saying it is alleged. Obviously, there are instances where persons who, having heard those allegations now, object to them. Those objections too are also allowed to be recorded, and they're all there. What we also found is that in the observation report, some unnecessary data was being put inside. And this has to do with perhaps the particular preferences of each officer or each station. We believe that some of the things that were being included in there, for example, details of the box, were not necessary because they were being included on the statement of recount, or they would have been included on the ballot box checklist. Mind you, let me backtrack a second. I said earlier on that some of the things that were being checked, we were looking at reducing. That will obviously have an impact on the contents of the ballot box checklist as to what we're looking at. So the objections, that was an issue that was dealt with, and I hope that it was dealt with definitively enough by the Commission, and that the specific instructions of the Commission and the guidance provided by the Commission will be passed on to the staff as is necessary. And speaking about passing on instructions to the staff, from the time this process started, we have had the issue where different instructions are passed to the staff on different days. For example, this morning we heard about new measures being implemented. Who can't get what document and who can't take pictures, and I'll speak about use of phones in the stations in a second. You heard me speak as well earlier on about a basket of issues being developed. From the start of this process to now, we have dealt with about 20 issues. As like I said, it was a dynamic process. About 20 issues have been developed and dealt with. All of those issues, now resolved issues, are included in a document which will be circulated to all of the staff members. It will be circulated to the stakeholders in this process. So when an issue now arises, you don't have to reinvent the wheel and try to figure out what the solution is. It is there, refer to that document and find the solution and move on. If new issues arise, the Commission meets at least once daily or almost daily. If new issues arise, they can be dealt with in a similar manner, and that basket will be updated as is necessary. On the issue of cell phones and cell phone use in the stations, we've had varying issues with this. You'd recall 2 days ago, an attempt was made to put signs outside of polling stations, outside of workstations, which specifically prohibited the use of cell phones in stations, which was clearly a violation, a flagrant violation of the decision taken by the Commission. The Commission understands, as a whole, the Commission understands the importance of someone's cell phone in a station. But while you have a right to have and use your cell phone in the station, we also have some restrictions. For example, it is perhaps a pet peeve of the chairman for persons not to capture the images of the staff who are conducting the process. I don't have a difficulty with that. In fact, I supported that idea, and I supported that there's a prohibition on that. But we took a decision that the ballot box, when it comes in, it is being photographed by our staff anyhow, that stakeholders present in the room would have an equal opportunity to take a photograph of that. The other right that they have in the room in relation to the use of cell phones, they are allowed to take pictures of documents that are provided to them, etc. And they are allowed to text or receive calls, perhaps, without disturbing the proceedings. So we saw some variations of that trying to be imposed this morning, but thankfully the Commission has reaffirmed that this is our position, and hopefully it will be communicated properly to the staff who are conducting the exercise. I believe that may be the last issue, as far as I can recall, and I've made a note of. The last issue is that in certain instances, because, for example, how the objections were being recorded and refusal by GECOM staff to record certain objections and so on, you had persons this morning, representatives, who refused to sign the observation report, and in at least one instance refused to sign the statement of recall. And that representative was prevented or denied a copy of the document that they refused to sign. that was also clarified. We don't have a difficulty. We don't have a difficulty if you refuse to sign it. You're entitled to it because you are there as a party representative, whether or not you sign. And that was also a decision that was reaffirmed today, after there was necessity to do so because a different position was being carried out in the station. So those, ladies and gentlemen, are the issues that I have to raise and address at this point.
Mr. Garaj, you had suggested previously the establishment of 20 workstations within the convention center. Based on what you've seen now, do you think there could be arrangement for an additional 10 to complement the 10 already there?
Ms. Eba, you'd recall that my original suggestion for 20 workstations included the use of the external facilities of the building. I still maintain that 20 workstations are eminently possible, but I'll be a realist. I'll be a realist. Given what we are seeing with the weather, and where I'm standing is testimony enough of that, I would want to refrain at this time from actively suggesting the use or advocating the use of the external of the building, at least at this time. But like I've said, I've seen inside lots of facilities. But if it becomes necessary, and why I'm saying if it becomes necessary, if perchance there is some reason why we cannot use the extent of the interior of the building as we see it for the additional stations, with the proper facilities being implemented on the outside, I believe that facilities can be made to put it outside.
How many can be accommodated inside of this? That extra ones can be accommodated in this?
I have looked at least six. At least six could be accommodated inside.
Should the COVID-19 task force refuse to allow to have any more conversations altogether to be set up, what options would be available to the commission?
Gary, you're touching on an issue which I don't like to address. No,
I
hear you.
Initially, when the COVID-19 task force did an assessment, even the number of personnel had to be restricted, yes, because of the facility not. They said it wouldn't go out.
Right. So I've made my views public on this before. While I recognize and appreciate the importance of COVID-19 and its effect, the effect it's having on the world, I have lots of respect for it, perhaps even fear. However, GECOM is an independent body, and with the necessary medical advice, I believe we are free to make decisions in relation to the use of this building. So from the outset, let me say, and like I've said before, I don't believe that we should be seeking permission from the COVID-19 task force. For what we should be doing is making decisions, informed decisions based on medical advice, public health advice, etc., and informing the COVID task force that this is what we're doing. But we're adopting a different stance, and as I've said earlier on, I'm part of a democratic organization, hopefully, and I let democracy prevail. If, for whatever reason, that the number of workstations that are possible here is somehow fettered, then the other option that we have impacts on the time, the overall duration, would be to increase the number of hours we work in a day. It is an option that is eminently available to us, and if it becomes necessary, in fact, even with the increased workstations, it is also something that can be considered so as to facilitate a timely conclusion of this process.
Increasing the time in the
increasing the number of hours that we work in a day.
Is this sentiment shared by the other outside?
It's not something that is discussed or even mulled at this time because we are looking at the options that I told you. However, I don't see that if those options, the commission as a whole, like I said, feels that this thing needs to be done in a timely manner. Everyone, on both sides, all the members, all 7 members, thinks, look, this thing is getting overbearing. You need to get it, you need to have it moving a little quicker. And we're all addressing our minds. If it becomes necessary to look at that option, obviously it's an option I will be happy to suggest, and hopefully we can consider it.
Sir, with if 6 workstations are added to the 10, taking it to about 16, how many ballot boxes you average they'll be able to complete a day? You see, I think the highest number is 53, is that correct?
Yesterday, I believe 54 boxes were concluded. In fact, I'll address the number of boxes in a second. But I believe, I'm not sure as we currently stand, how many were completed today. I believe that we are climbing every day. Well, that I believe, we can see that we are climbing every day. And what I believe is that we have not reached our crescendo, as it were. We haven't reached the climax. So hopefully we can reach there. And with 16 workstations, you're talking about a 60% increase in facilities to come. So if we are to take the number that we are doing at its highest, with 16 workstations and a minimum number of boxes to be concluded a day, we can easily do over 100 boxes a day, which would really bring down the time within which this can be done.
So the target that you're looking at, will it be a moving target to be set day after day, setting a quota for the workstation?
No, I think that what we can do from the outset is set a target and start working towards that target. And we are here every day. Most of the commissioners, the chairman is here almost every day. Most of us are here every day. We are walking around. We are seeing what is happening. We are actively looking at ways of improving the system. So if we set a target and it needs to be revised upwards or downwards on a given day or within a day, all of those are options that we can consider.
You talked about removing unnecessary observations or objections. What objections are currently being made and recorded that GECOM has not yet decided are unnecessary, but that you think are unnecessary?
Let me start with some of the objections that we think are unnecessary. Ballot box received in good order. All 4 seals intact. No party seal on ballot box. All 4 party seals on ballot box. All that is unnecessary. All of that is unnecessary in my opinion. Because most of those elements are included already on a ballot box checklist. In relation to the other kinds of objections, particularly those that are being... So those are real observations. And it was intended that the observation report would better contain anomalies rather than the state of the box, etc., being reported on. You expect the box to be in a certain state. You expect the certain things to be in order. And the observation report was intended originally to record anomalies rather than the state of the box. In relation to the other objections that are there, I've spoken over and over about the objections that are being raised by stakeholders, so I need not delve into that again.
Okay, so ballot box received in order, all seals intact, no party seal, those are not going to be recorded.
They ought not to be recorded.
In your opinion?
Right, but those are, that is my opinion. But what we intend to do as a commission, I will throw my opinions as to what I don't think should be there, or what I think should be there. The other commissioners will do that, and we are hoping to create a list of permissible and not permissible items so that we can move that forward as well.
Let me give you another example, because this is puzzling. One agent is saying that you may meet a voter whose name is not ticked off on the list as have voted, but an objection is being raised that they are dead. What is the usefulness of raising such an objection if, even if they are dead, it won't affect the vote?
Well, Kibal, I believe that whether or not they voted, like I said earlier on, our decision is that these things will be prefaced as being an allegation. Why? Because anyone can come and make such a statement. It's unsubstantiated. And what we found happening as well is, for example, one particular agent will just call a dozen random names and numbers. Could you tell me 157924446? In fact, we've had some instances where numbers were being called far beyond the number of persons on the list. And you call them, they look and they see, well, one or two out of the numbers voted, and they objected to those numbers. In one instance, an agent refused to sign a statement of recount or an observation report, because the GECOM staff refused to record objections to numbers that did not correspond to the list. Like I just said, there were 100 and something persons on the list, and serial numbers exceeding that were called.
So some staffers are refusing to record that.
Yeah, because it's silly. You're going to ask me to check a serial number 200 when the list has 180 names on it.
But it's the official position of the commission not to record it if it goes beyond the number.
No. As it is being done. The recording of objections, etc., is being done on an ad hoc basis almost, because of the adhocracy that attends to the objections coming from the agents. What we are trying to do is to make it a little bit more structured or streamlined, whereby persons can, whereby we have a list of things that should be entertained, which should be included there, etc.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Could you say if the CARICOM scrutinizing team formed part of the commission meeting today?
No.
Or could you say when was the last time the commission met, had a formal meeting with the CARICOM scrutinizing team, and what were their primary concerns?
The CARICOM scrutinizing team met with us last, if my memory serves me correctly, on the Saturday that we met with the stakeholders. That would have been the 2nd of May. I don't recall as I stand here whether we had a subsequent meeting with them, but I'm aware they're here every day, they're participating, but they have not met with the commission as a whole since that initial meeting. They did not have any, they didn't have any major concerns. This basket of issues, and I'll touch, maybe every time you ask me a question, I'm remembering new things to tell you. This basket of issues that we spoke about, they had asked for that. They had asked for that frequently expected issues, issues that we expect to arise frequently, be included in a document so that we can have references. Unfortunately, it's a week later that we're trying to get it sorted. And why that's important as well. We've had instances where for example, the validity of votes is questioned. This is the the state of a rejected ballot. You've had instances where for example, an X is outside of the box, or those kinds of things. The general overarching principle is that as long as the intention of the voter can be discerned, that vote has to be considered as valid for the party to which that intention relates. We've had instances as late as yesterday whereby agents had to be fighting in stations for such things to be dealt with. They were rejected ballots. When you looked at them, they were clear. It was clear that the intention of the voter was available, and as a consequence, it should have been awarded. However, there were issues that had to be escalated up towards the supervisors, etc. We are hoping to have all of those things now properly documented. That will also help in speeding up the process, because the escalation of those issues may not be necessary anymore. It can be resolved in the ballot station. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.